What if everything you thought you knew about Jesus was only half the story? For centuries, a hidden version was buried, until now. Over 2.4 billion people follow Christianity, the largest religion on earth, but few realize it's built on a single narrative of Jesus, chosen, while others were banned or destroyed. In 1945, 13 ancient texts were uncovered in a sealed jar. They revealed teachings the church tried to erase, and a Jesus unlike the one in the Bible, a teacher of awakening, not obedience. These texts were suppressed for over 16 centuries, not by accident, but by design. In its early years, Christianity wasn't unified, it was fragmented. Mystics in Egypt, bishops in Rome, teachers in Syria, all claimed to speak for Christ. The doctrines we know today were just one version that gained power and silenced the rest. Gnosticism comes from the Greek word gnosis, meaning knowledge, but it wasn't a single sect. It was a movement built on one idea. Salvation comes through inner awakening, not blind faith. To the Gnostics, the material world wasn't created by the highest God. It was the flawed work of a lesser being, later called the demiurge, who ruled through deception and control. They believed the divine spark was trapped inside the human soul, and awakening meant remembering where you really came from and breaking free from the illusion. The church taught obedience. Gnostics taught insight. They saw Jesus not as a sacrifice for sin, but as a revealer, someone who came to expose the truth and guide souls back to the source. In 367 CE, Bishop Athanasius of Alexandria wrote a letter listing 27 books, the first known reference to the New Testament as we know it. It wasn't official doctrine yet, but his list became the blueprint. Church councils followed his lead, and everything not on that list was labeled heresy. The Nag Hammadi Codices were copied in the 4th century, but they're based on writings much older. More than 50 texts were discovered. Some were damaged or incomplete, but enough survived to rewrite what we thought we knew about early Christian thought. Gospels, mystical treatises, and esoteric dialogues, hidden for centuries. Among the 50 texts, 4 focus directly on Jesus, and they present a version unlike anything in the Bible. Like the New Testament Gospels, the Gnostic texts weren't written by eyewitnesses. Both emerged decades after Jesus' death, shaped by different communities with different visions of his message. But the Gnostic texts offer something else entirely. Not worship or sin, not salvation through sacrifice. Instead, self-knowledge, symbolic truth, and spiritual awakening. Here's what these Gnostic Gospels actually teach. The Gospel of Thomas, 114 sayings attributed to Jesus. No miracles, no crucifixion, no resurrection. Salvation isn't external. It's awakening to what's already inside you. The Gospel of Philip. Rituals aren't divine acts, they're symbolic. Baptism and communion weren't sacred commands, but metaphors for spiritual truth. The real meaning isn't in the ritual, it's in what it represents. The Gospel of Truth. Jesus didn't die to pay for sin, he came to dispel ignorance. Salvation isn't about belief, it's about understanding. Ignorance is the enemy. Truth is the cure. The Holy Book of the Great Invisible Spirit, also known as the Gospel of the Egyptians. It describes the soul's journey out of the material world and back to its divine origin. You're trapped in illusion. You were never meant to stay here. Rather than debate the Gnostics, the church buried their voices. If these texts hadn't been buried in Nag Hammadi, we might have never seen them at all. Did the church have the right to suppress the Gnostic Gospels? To church leaders, these texts weren't just wrong, they were dangerous. They challenged bishops, undermined the idea of one true faith, and offered a Jesus who couldn't support a unified institution. Their suppression was not seen as censorship, but as a defense of the faith. But from a historical and ethical perspective, no. Burning or burying alternative scriptures is censorship, not debate. It wasn't only heresy that was destroyed, it was thought itself. Imagine if science burned every competing theory, or if philosophy erased all rival schools of thought. That's how the Gnostic voice was erased from history. The Gnostic texts weren't just alternative. They threatened everything the church was building. They rejected blind obedience and rituals without meaning. They struck at the very foundation of institutional religion, offering a path to awakening that needed no priests, no hierarchy, not even a church. Suppressing the Gnostic Gospels didn't just preserve doctrine, it centralized control. Through sacraments, clergy, and creeds, the church made itself the gateway to salvation. With orthodoxy came structure, bishops, councils, and eventually popes. Gnosticism rejected all of it. It needed no institution, only awakening. The church gained power not just over belief, but over emperors, governments, and entire civilizations. Gnosticism could never serve empire. Orthodoxy could. By choosing one path and burying the other, the church didn't merely shape Christianity, it shaped history itself.